looked at empirically, not just taken as theories. And I think if you look at this one, you're going to find that the consequences of failing in Afghanistan or precipitately leaving Afghanistan would be destabilization of South Asia. That's where that's the first domino that topples. Rather than just worrying about what's going to happen directly here. But on Pashtunizing the war, I think that when it comes down to ending the conflict in Afghanistan, that is going to be done by the Afghans and the Pashtuns. It's not just going to be US forces. It's not just going to be foreign soldiers. If the Afghans believe they've got a stake in this, they will stick with it.
Good. Okay. Christine, and then after Christina, Julie.
My name's Christina Lamb. I'm a journalist from the Sunday Times of London, and I've been reporting from Afghanistan since '87 when the Russians were there. I agree very much with Michael Semple with what he said about the Taliban using nationalism to get people to recruit and using the whole spectre of foreign occupation, which is very emotive in a country which has never been conquered. But if that's the case, doesn't that mean the more troops that you send, the more that people are going to be recruited? And the other point that I'd like to make is I just don't see that ordinary Afghans are seeing benefit from the presence of Western forces there. Report just came out showing that Afghanistan, after 8 years of international presence, is still the most dangerous place in the world to have a baby. 70% of people don't have water or electricity. I'd have thought after 8 years that we could have done a bit better than that. And if you take Helmand for an example, where I've spent a lot of time with the British forces, it's very difficult to see how anybody could see that they're getting benefit from the presence of international troops, because almost everybody there now has lost a home or had a cousin killed or have some terrible story, and it's very hard to see anybody that has actually any positive experience, and I think that's what we need to be addressing.
Julie, pass this. Do you want to just pass the microphone down to Julia?
Thanks, Julian Borger from the Guardian. A lot of emphasis put today on showing that NATO and the West are there for the long haul, that they will outweigh the Taliban. I just wonder whether the surge isn't a contradiction of that, because Pakistan, the Taliban, the other players know it's not sustainable politically, and that if we're going for a sprint with a lot of troops, all the Taliban have to do is absorb the punches and wait us out, knowing that we've talked here about 12 months to 18 months to know if it's a success or not. Isn't a smaller footprint more sustainable?
Let me just respond to that very quickly. Sir, I don't think you understand what a surge is. A surge is sending in sufficient troops to acquire and attain a situation of security so that the people can continue with normal lives. By the way, anybody who believes that the Afghans would like to see a return to the Taliban, where they hung women from the goalposts in the soccer stadium on Saturdays, I don't think is a truly understanding of Afghan opinion. But the surge then trains and equips the Afghan army, as we did the Iraqi army. They take over the responsibilities. That's what the whole object is to transition from Allied forces to Iraqi, or in this case, Afghan forces, who will then take over the responsibilities and ensure safety and security, and we withdraw. So it's not a matter of sustainability, it's a matter of success. It's a matter of breaking the enemy's will and training and equipping and availing the people of Afghanistan the ability to lead some kind of lives that all of us want people all over this planet to live in. So you and I have a very different interpretation of what the surge is. A surge object is the withdrawal of troops, but first you have to obtain success.
But if the surge is exclusive of anything else but soldiers, but troops, it will not be success in my view. You've got a surge. What is it we want President Karzai and his government to deliver? We've thrown lots of rocks at him. We've never really said what it is. Here are the 10 things that we expect you to deliver. What are we going to do then to help him and his government deliver that? Where's the government building battalion going to come out of NATO or the United Nations or the international organizations or the universities? And where is the economic revitalization of businessmen and women willing to risk dollars now to provide jobs that will go down the road and help those.
But what about
So it
Christina's
cannot
point?
be exclusive to troop
But what about
surge.
Christina's point that if Afghans feel that it hasn't happened with the troops there in the last 8 years, why should they believe it's going to bring them any benefit now?
And that's why it's got to be not exclusive to troops only. And lastly, that surge has got to include, as was articulated back here, a significant different approach into Pakistan with the Pakistanis who have to be at the table and sustain in an entirely different way.
And that's why we have a short time frame rather than a long one. And I am convinced that militarily, as the general said, I think
You don't
militarily
recognize-
I'm not concerned. What I'm very concerned about is the other parts of the equation which are not there yet.
You know, Lise, I said that the surge is too little, too late. The perception there is, even if the troops are now sent, the perception there is that all your polls are saying the American people don't like it, that the president has done this very reluctantly or is going to do it very reluctantly, that it's only a matter of time before the same popular pressures for the withdrawal of the troops to find some other settlement in Afghanistan come pouring forth from America and from Europe. So, you know, so the holding operation, it can at best be a holding operation. All this talk about exit strategies and congressional elections coming next year, all this feeds into the perception that, you know, the Americans are not going to win. So I think the general is right. We need to use this as space in which to create the will to move towards a political long-term solution. I think what you need to do is break the back of Al-Qaeda and then do a deal with the Pakistanis to incorporate elements of the Taliban into any future dispensation.
The lady in the back.
Peace Nexus Foundation. I'd like to pick up on your last point. The panel has emphasized prioritized commitment and the need for the international community to show commitment that we're in for the long run. How do we do that when the US public in NATO has clearly shown and shows in poll after poll after poll that we're not necessarily committed? How do you square those two things?
Let me quickly respond to that. I know sometimes to my dismay, we have the most eloquent president in a long, long time. I am absolutely convinced that when President Obama speaks to the American people and outlines a strategy and the path to success, that he will win a significant amount of time of patience on the part of the American people. Because I think he has very great communications with the American people. And once he decides on this strategy and presents his case to the American people, I think they will have the patience and give him the opportunities to succeed with this strategy. So it's not going to be unlimited, and it possibly could have an effect on the 2010 elections. But my view is that the economy is the thing that's going to have the effect on the 2010 elections.
Murat Mercan, Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Turkish Parliament. I have a question to Senator Kane. You're referring to the drug narcotics. You said that Turks have the drug problem. I'm 50 years of age, living all my life in Turkey. Never had this drug problem. So I don't know where you get this idea that Turks. You get this idea of finding similarity between Afghanistan drug production and Turkish drug production. And my second question...
Let me answer. I get the idea of the fact that poppy production in Turkey has dropped dramatically over the last several years, and I'll be glad to show you the facts.
Good,
now, I'm 50 years old.
Okay. All right, we'll take it up later. We'll take it up later. We're glad you're not on drugs.
Now, my question is to the panel. How are you going to win the hearts and the minds of the Afghan people? Why those forces have a lot of civilian casualties?
Okay, let's hand the microphone to this gentleman here. I'm going to take a few questions in a row because we are coming to the end of the panel, and many of you are. Let's keep them short questions, please. Can I start with the last question, Michael?
Quite clear. If Netherlands wants to make a positive contribution, it should first of all keep its troops and secondly be part of an effective peace process.
My first message to the Karzai government would be clean up the corruption. People aren't going to pay taxes to a corrupt regime. As far as the withdrawal is concerned, again, I would argue to our NATO allies that we are in this together. I understand public opinion. Do what you can rather than have recriminations towards our allies who will not provide more. Let's thank them for what they've done, including the Canadians, including for the first time have really been heavily engaged outside of Canada in many, many conflicts. And finally, on the hearts and minds, it's not that the people of Afghanistan show any loyalty to the Taliban. They don't. The fact is that whether we can convince the people of Afghanistan that they will have a government that they can trust and an environment in which they can raise their families and achieve their aspirations and their goals.
You know, I think on the corruption side, I think it's step one. Restore the destroyed confidence in the government with very specific and concrete actions over this next 6 months that is going to be worthy of an investment from Canada, the United States, the rest of the international community, and worthy of continued support from the people of Afghanistan in whatever manner that transpires. Priority two is that surge, which has got to be fundamentally linked to that restoration of confidence in a government that has lost confidence, has lost the confidence of somewhat of investing nations and contributing nations and the people themselves.
You
Priority
worried,
one and two.
to pick up on his question, you worried that Canadian troops preparing to leave is also going to send the wrong message?
We always worry about the messages that are sent out. I mean, what we want to do is restore at the geopolitical level a seriousness that we are going to get this right. That then might change the entire dynamic internationally. I think Senator McCain saying that President Obama, when he decides and articulates his strategy, he's not just a leader of the United States of America. He does represent a huge leadership in the world, and his ability to articulate eloquently the need and what we're doing and what we're going to achieve and why we should stay there can shape many countries, not just the United States of America.
Okay.
Sorry,
no.
you left me out.
Okay, no, I didn't, because there's so many more questions left. You're going to get your chance. So let's...
Congressman Issa from the United States, from California. The corollaries between Vietnam and Afghanistan have become so undeniable. I want to ask a question in light of that. Early in the Vietnam War, we sided with the chosen government and the chosen leaders, and they were incredibly corrupt. There came a time when we said we're there for the people of Vietnam, and we clearly showed signs that we were not necessarily there for any particular leader. If that be true, and if that is part of showing broadly the Afghan people the importance of our presence there for them, and not necessarily for somebody who was earlier chosen and earlier sort of a consensus, how do we express that? I don't want to use Vietnam as the example of how to do it, but how do we express it? How do we transition? What are the do's and don'ts of making that transition toward we are there for the people of Afghanistan, we are not there for a government that fails to defend and support its people through eliminating corruption?
Okay, the clock is ticking. This gentleman here, we're just going to get a few comments from the floor, brief comments before we turn back to the panel. Or
my
questions.
name is Çağrı Erhan.
Yeah.
I'm a professor of international relations in Ankara University, Turkey. In fact, I was confused about Afghanistan when the debate was started, but I'm now more confused after 90 minutes of discussion here. As a poor academic, throughout all my professional life, I tried to find simple, reasonable answers to two simple questions: why and what. So why are we in Afghanistan? Are we far from our initial targets in 2001? And what are we searching in Afghanistan? Are we trying to bring a Western-type democracy to Afghanistan? Are we trying to stabilize Afghanistan economy?